as a storm for the side of Fire Strays, whereas Qadsiah are looking to lean more on that Punisher and Wolverine, potentially expecting that Groot.
Yeah, we spoke to Insomnia yesterday after their game against Peps, and they believe that the damage boost for the Punisher is a very valuable asset, and like how Storm gets a bunch of value simply from existing in the proximity of the Punisher and allowing him to reach breakpoints against strategists when it comes to overall damage output, and really taxing the movement of Vanguards who don't have that permanently available shielding like a Doctor Strange.
We're starting off with the armor up for both teams, utilizing the team up between the Penny Parker and the Rocket Raccoon so they can get the 50 bonus armor for their teams. And of course, Qadsiah will be trying to focus some of those jump packs, or at least one of the jump packs, onto the Wolverine, as Helis will be looking for an early pickup.
Helis, one of the quintessential Wolverine players of EMEA. The other likely to be team captain, if I had to guess. Oh, Kai might actually go for an attempted mugging portal here. Perhaps Helis can just dash on through, instantly get a kidnapping through the portal. But instead, they're just going to prioritize getting location on the point right here. There's actually a second portal coming in from Deppy, instantly just taking away that high ground and getting a preferential position for the beginning. Great force physics drags down Fire Strays onto the low ground, forcing the rest of the team to relocate to support their stranded Vanguard.
One person who doesn't have to worry about that low ground, though, is Vale. You called it earlier, the Flyer Merchant on that Storm, looking for some early pickups. Needs to be careful of the flanking Wolverine, but will be able to escape ever so barely as Helis gets completely slumbered by the Mantis. Able to get behind that Guardian barrier, though, gets healed up and will get away. Deppy will be the first to fall.
So, real Binary Jeff reveal right here. I'm quite surprised by it. Binary, usually one of the Vanguard players for Fire Strays, swapping everyone to his strategist, of course, to help allow for that Jeff-Nado combination to be dealt with. Tilt here has to be careful with how they're going to be using their Final Judgment, as it's one of the main ways of burning through the Jeff-Nado and countering it out when your strategist ultimates are going to be a lot less useful.
Triple strategist, double duelist, solo Vanguard coming in for Fire Strays. Qadsiah sticking with a more standard 2-2-2 setup here. But again, it's all about the timing. He is again not finding the quick isolation, because they do have to push forward at least a little bit to take some of the pressure off of Qadsiah, who will get healed up nice and quickly, but they're getting targeted down. In comes the Omega Hurricane. Will this be a Jeff-Nado to try and burst through? No. They will. There it is. Drops right at the end to extend the duration. Invisible boundary and completely sniped, taking out Vale.
Perfectly played by Tilt, as well as the backup coming through from Lindstrom, erecting that invisible boundary to make sure that there was enough sustain for the Punisher to stay alive and keep on kicking out that damage. It was perfectly calculated to deal with Fire Strays' Jeff-Nado.
Trying to go for that huge burst early on in these fights, but Qadsiah are on point already. They've got these defensive abilities. They still have the Soul Resurgence and that Eye of Agamotto. Fire Strays, they have charged up their own Final Judgment and are about to have their own Soul Resurgence, so can try and rush in with that damage boost and commit to a big engage. And of course, Punisher immune to that Eye of Agamotto if they do decide to dive in here. Final Judgment gonna be dropped with the damage buff. Eye of Agamotto to the back line to try and protect them as they push on through.
Unreal onto Kai. Remember, in this Soul Resurgence, there is additional movement speed, which is why Whoops is being able to haul around even during that ultimate. Multiple players could get mind controlled here. Deppy seducing all and sundry who dare to gaze into the eyes of Emma Frost, and Fire Strays, after investing all of the resources they had to hand, finally flipped the point.
On 99%, it's only going to take one recap for Qadsiah to lock in on this first round of domination. Currently, 4 final hits for Whoops there, and they are trying to push back in. Tilt leading at some huge damage to try and punish Fire Strays for anyone who stays out of position for any second too long.
Second there. Anything is seen here. It might be time to roll on through. Last stand grabs multiple players, and Helis has no intention of stopping, just rolling forward with absolute rage in the middle of his bones. Qadsiah should be able to cap here. It's going to be an attempt to try and potentially TP back. No, Fire Strays don't have the time. They're going to call this one right here.
Back it out. Don't want to build any ult charge for Qadsiah heading into round 2. They just retreat and are going to wait further back in the spawn so that they can prepare for Super Soldier Factory to try and bring this back in the reverse sweep of game number 1. And that Wolverine, we know how strong it can be. It hasn't actually been targeted too much, or at least as much as some of these big key characters we pointed out earlier, but does still make appearances in the protections for exactly this reason. Percentage damage, crowd control, the ability to remove and break siege lines. It is such a strong character.
Okay, so we've got a different dynamic coming up here when it comes to the Jeff Nadeau that Vale and Binary have available. Yes, Tilt is going to once again have a final judgment to try and burst it down, but it's going to be lacking an invisible boundary. Maluki's Soul Resurgence, not a great support for the Punisher ultimate because it's not CC immune, and therefore the Mantis can get sucked up and all of that healing will go to waste. So here, Tilt needs to be either completely on it when it comes to shutting down that Storm, or maybe our Qadsiah just take a mulligan on the fight with the Jeff Nadeau and we're like, okay, we don't have the resources to deal with this, we just won't dump.
Maybe worse.
They're going to be splitting off very far, multiple people in multiple different directions so that they can flank onto Fire Strays when needed, as Fire Strays will take the more aggressive point position. But we already talked about it. Our Qadsiah with the flank on the high ground to make it much harder for Fire Strays to stay down there without being punished.
Healer strapping from behind. The other way to try and shut this one down would be to get... Oh, great shutdown. Making sure that Binary is able to actually allocate themselves onto this Jeff Nadeau. It's an absolute reign of terror here from Vale. That's my flyer immersion. Raining from above. Aerial supremacy is maintained by Strays.
Exactly what we were looking for, exactly what you said earlier. They didn't even burn the final judgment. They know that there's nothing they could have done to stop that. They just let it go, take the mulligan, and are portaling back in for the reinforcement, for the retake, to not give any chance for Fire Strays to breathe and build charge. Moving in immediately with the final judgment and the Soul Resurgence, trying to focus onto those frontliners, try and take out the EMEA. Here's the counter with the invisible boundary from Fire Strays. Quick drop to the low ground to keep Tilt up as Whoops is cleaning up right now, but they've only been able to get Tilt so far, and everyone else is in the backline. Finally, they will get healers who swaps to the magic for that dive.
Oh, the Whoops' aggression is so well rewarded here. Big investment of the portal. Kai thinks it's winnable. I mean, Kai may have a better read than me. Already grabbed 2, but I feel like just does not have the resource to try and make this one work. Deppy still has a nearly fully charged Sonic Beam. And Fire Strays are able to clutch out off the back of that. Maybe Kai is going to swap away from the Doctor Strange here after having used that portal, and that's why they've chosen to use the Eye of Agamotto. It looks like we're going to actually stick to it. Healers on their 3rd hero of the round are going over to the Winter Soldier, which is going to be a little bit better for trying to shut down Storm. That tainted voltage will knock her right out of the sky.
Get some shots onto Storm. If they can land a bionic hook onto a solo Vanguard, it could be effective, assuming that Emma Frost is not in that diamond form. So they're going to look for an aggressive psionic seduction from the backline. Invisible boundary, but wiped off the board. Deppy is cleaned out by Maluki. Kaya gets Vale, and this time Qadsiah are cleaning up the fight one by one, forcing Binary into a full retreat. Exo's getting chased down, will get finished off by Kaya.
All right. Excellent catch of the aggression from Fire Strays there by Qadsiah. Lindstrom just brings up the invisible boundary behind Deppy, making sure that Fire Strays' strategist had no idea where that Vanguard was. So we're only getting that little ghost every couple of seconds to try and update the position of Deppy. The healing couldn't be delivered, and so Deppy was isolated and destroyed. And then there was no space for Vale to work with. But once again, the Jeff Nadeau's ready to go. Tilt and Lindstrom are far behind on the counter ultimates here, so it might well be another mulligan fight, but you need to get aggressive to try and outpace Fire Strays.
The Kraken impact coming in early. Everyone is so low, but they just can't find the reset. Able to escape. Omega Hurricane. Jeff Nadeau to push on in. And they are cleaning up 2-3. Looking for the 4th. Lindstrom is melted. Milk Boy is all that's left and is wiped off the board. Fire Strays take back control. It is 82-46 right now in favor of Fire Strays. Qadsiah, they still had that Doctor Strange. They lost the Eye of Agamotto. They swapped off it in order to get the cap in.
Yeah, the portal was used earlier on to try and get a fast fight after the Jeff Nadeau, and so it's not off cooldown now. Instead, just going for speed and longevity of the cap, who can do this all day. Coming in from the other side, Healer's actually moving through on the Human Torch, being able to do this all day. Whoops already managed to take down Maluki. She's not going to be part of this fight. Yeah, Kyra is starting to get this back cap, but their team around the 3D peak, they can simply see every other member of Qadsiah being turned to dust before their eyes. Fire Strays are going to equal us up, surely.
Qadsiah runs off the edge. They know they're not going to be able to hold this. Again, don't give any ult charge over. They go down, and that is going to be 1-1 in this game number 1. We are starting to see Fire Strays creep on back in. We saw our Qadsiah, though. They've swapped over to the Torch, as you mentioned. They've got the Captain America. Do they stick with this or go back to what they were running before? Looks like at least the Doctor Strange will be making a return.
Okay, so now it's decision time right now for Qadsiah. Tilt and Lindstrom, they're synced up on their ultimates, but they've been desynced from Veil and Binary. The Final Judgment and the Invisible Boundary is a consistent and strong counter, probably the only one available at the moment in these compositions to the Jeff Nado. And if you don't save those, they've lost every fight against the Jeff Nado that they've not been able to counter. Do you decide to take like the first fight with a fairly difficult to beat high output Punisher ultimate, then try and out-generate Fire Strays when it comes to these ultimates just by leveraging the defensive position? Or do you hold on to these ultimates?
Well, they're certainly going for an aggressive opening, at least trying to get onto the point, claim the position. This may be a show that if they're going to wait for Fire Strays to push up, they may burn that Final Judgment to keep hold of this here, as we see Qadsiah make their way to that point, holding it as Fire Strays rotate up to the high ground to try and break it that way without hyper-committing.
Oh, Helis has played a little bit of everything in this already so far. Veil and Binary, the sword of Damocles that hangs over it. There's a Venn diagram of healing that comes on up. Helis manages to get a right click onto somebody. Oh, the damage amplification. It's so much to try and deal with. Tilt is just pushing out frag after frag from the Final Judgment. And while Kioshis will come up close and punch his lights out, there's little more that can be done.
But they did exactly what you said. They burnt the Invisible Boundary. They burnt that Final Judgment. And we are currently at 94% for Veil on that Omega Hurricane. Binary, 82% for its Jeff. And they will have a Soul Rejuvenation, which is at least some kind of extra protection if they decide to commit to this. Fire Strays could try and wipe the board again, but there is at least one counter Omega Hurricane to try and deal with those backliners.
Previously, Qadsiah, the decision they've made is to actually play aggressively and roll the initiative, but this time it's Veil who goes first. Will you try and do a Mega Hurricane on top of a Mega Hurricane? It would certainly be an interesting way to try and deal with this one. Out comes the Eye of Agamotto. Milk Boys managed to make it work in the back. Finally, they found the counter. Omega Hurricane versus Omega Hurricane. Just getting that overhealth from Maluki was more than enough for Veil to win out the Battle of the Winds.
Nicely done. With that extra bonus health, with that extra damage, they focus onto it. Omega Hurricane, some insane single target damage. If you can get directly on top of someone, you know exactly where that Omega Hurricane Jeff Nado is going, and you can't be pulled up while in it. It is a great idea, a great counter, and it's allowing Qadsiah to hit 60% as they try to hold the point. Fire Strays, Deppy leading the charge with this Mind's Aegis. They are starting to run low on time, but they do have the Psionic Seduction if they want to try and commit for another engage.
Oh, they're in real trouble here, Tetra. This needs to be huge from Deppy. Their trump card is gone, and they do not have control. Milkboy matches when it comes to the Psionic Seduction, and Kai just flicks that shield up and down whenever it's needed. It's down to Whoops to try and make it work into the Invisible Boundary that was brought up by Lindstrom, and they just don't see any targets before them. Not willing to go inside the bounds of invisibility because it would cut them off from their strategists and Fire Strays. It would appear that their cheese has been counted for now. Qadsiah found the answer, and the teleporter's coming in.
With overtime ticking down, Binary rushing in alone to try and buy the extra time, but Tilt has timed the Final Judgment. Invisible Boundary for at least some kind of protection. They do not have the vision, but the damage output is still good. Whoops came into the Spider-Man for quick reinforcements, but Veil has taken down Tilt. Exo is down, Kioshis is down, Helis with the Omega Hurricane is cleaning up the counter. Engage is currently at 2 for 2, but Whoops is starting to get focused down. Everyone else is off the point, and that will be Qadsiah taking round number 3 and game number 1.
Oh, the brutality of Kaya getting both the Storm and the Jeff with a single release of the Maelstrom of Madness as well. They're about 20% short of being able to get that ultimate combo and maybe clutch out the fight. But what adaptation midway through this series by Qadsiah to use that target focus of the Omega Hurricane, which is not CCable, cannot be absorbed by the Jeff Nado, to take out their greatest nemesis, which up until then had been Fire Strays' greatest weapon.
But also a big focus onto Tilt here. You called it. Adds total across all the games compared to the stats we were just talking about earlier. The 45 Loki bans. It is the rise of Cloak and Dagger in these drafts.
Just trying to get rid of that Eternal Bond. So difficult to deal with. It lasts a while and, of course, gains a huge amount of territory and space for your team. That means that you can make some very audacious plays without the administration of the Vanguards having to buy that space for you by trading their health pool or their utility for all of that juicy space.
Now, this is a bit more of a cheeky call, nothing too analytical here, but of course this is one of the maps where you can see penny bombs trying to snipe across the map, and we're seeing so many teams opening with penny to give their team armor when they are on attack. Will we see someone from Qadsiah attempting to launch these mines across the map, and will they be able to catch anyone as we are heading into game number 2? Can Qadsiah close this out, or will we see the comeback?
Oh, hello. Is that an Ultron I see before me? Exo's playing the Ultron. Interesting. And it's Whoops who's going to be on the Mantis. Okay, EMEA, I see you. Binary's going to be harassing the backline on the captain. This is a very weird place to start doing a portal. Okay, show me what you're cooking, Kaya.
Kaya setting themselves up portal to rush round after they've already set up on the front line to try and force a positional adjustment, and they have successfully claimed this high ground against Fire Strays after trying to force them to fight on the corner itself. Vale is sieging in from the backline though after going for a wraparound.
Yeah, just slowly eroding all of that space by making it inhospitable to have your feet there. Tilt, of course, is going to be a very big problem to deal with for all of these flyers. For hit scan of the assault rifle, not to be underestimated, especially when Healers is sitting here, given that pocket damage boost as well as throwing out damage in their own right. For now, Binary continues to make sure that this high ground is inhospitable to any of the attackers grabbing onto it. And it seems like for now, Qadsiah are actually in a less of an ideal position. They've kind of been put into this little cove where they don't really have any way to go but forward, and so forward will be how they march.
Trying to push on in. You can see the wraparound of Exo hiding on the corner, sniping where they can, but it's the slow creep of Qadsiah for the aggressive position. Binary pushes in, gets slumbered, and that's enough to set them up for the elimination as in comes the Rage of Ultron on the flank to try and burst through these attackers to get the counter pick up. But with Kyoshis and Binary down, they are outnumbered and will have to back away, getting sniped on the retreat by Tilt, who is locked onto these flyers, taking out Vale with the help of Maluki as well, and they are not stopping.
Nasty tracking coming through there from Tilt, really showing off what an aimer can do on the new and improved Punisher as of Season 2.5. He got 10 more bullets in his magazine, and each of the individual bullets has gone up in damage considerably, becoming a team-up anchor and getting a raw damage boost. So that's why you're seeing so much Punisher recently.
Extremely effective, like you've already mentioned, just doing so well against these flyers, so well against Groot, who was extremely popular up until quite recently and still does see a lot of play. You can see Maluki making sure that that Punisher is always damage boost. Here comes Binary, slumbered immediately and absolutely countered out by Milk Boy. Final judgment for Tilt, capitalizing on the fact that they have the numbers advantage, pushing on in to try and take out the defenders, to try and push up even further. 3 bodies on the point and several bodies in the spawn.
So Qadsiah, despite playing a similar comp, have actually changed up how they play their ultimates here, because they're no longer saving their invisible boundary for the Jeff Nader, which means Lindstrom can kind of use it as it is needed, often going to be used to try and match Kiyoshi's, but Kiyoshi's actually has a significant advantage on the invisible boundary here. So Qadsiah are going to be under-resourced for this one. Healers hangs out in the stratosphere for a moment before descending with a storm of the century.
Ayamagamoto for the setup sends them all, but it's too much healing. Binary healing up their team with that freedom charge there. Kyoshi with the invisible boundary. That's enough to keep Fire Strays up through that Omega Hurricane, and enough for Vale to supernova, push on forward, and wipe out the attacking Qadsiah. Fire Strays finally put a stop to this.
Interesting strat there by Kaya to go for the Eye of Agamotto, because I believe the Omega Hurricane can hit both the body and the soul at the same time for overwhelming damage. But Binary and Kiyoshi is combining their own defensive utility to be able to sit through that. Kaya opens up a portal, and this is going to allow for a little bit of a wraparound, as well as that makeshift shield as well that can't be fired through, meaning only one of these angles has to be babysat by Kaya for now. The Rage of Ultron drawn on through. If anyone gets mind controlled here, they will surely be decimated by Exo.
They do lose their Emma Frost, who was trying to set up with that great extra psionic seduction, meleeing with Ultron there to try and deal with the forward front line of Qadsiah. But Fire Strays will get zoned away a little bit. They're getting split up quite a lot as Qadsiah are taking the center room.
Yeah, it's a messy 3v3, and attempting attacks with this engagement is Binary, finding Maluki on her exit. She's going to be returning to the spawn room, and now Binary just making sure there's no space to be found. Maybe a slightly unintended heroic landing there, but still, Veil's going to be able to clean out.
Fire Strays are finally locked in and have held this point extremely effectively. Qadsiah, no portal. They're just going to have to march back in with this standard composition of the 2-2-2. They have 50% on that Omega Hurricane, 89, 90 now on their own Silent Seduction, 87 on the Final Judgment. So that will be the next trigger, trying to lock down their opponents and overwhelm them with the damage-boosted Final Judgment. As Fire Strays, they will lose that high ground, but they're still making sure to keep pressure on it, especially with Veil, who is on the flank consistently.
Oh, this is going to be a nasty supernova. Veil's got them all in a singular place, trying to deal with a healing coming through from the Mantis. Whoops barely stood a chance, instantly evaporated before the dual miniguns of Franklin Castle himself. Till under siege, but you better believe that the invisible boundary is drawn on up to keep Frank as healthy as can be. And now for Binary, he proclaims he can do it all day. Unfortunately, he's spreading misinformation.
Up to the high ground tilt, making sure that they can push on him for that final point. Potential for a culling turret if anyone could make it to the point, but no, this will be second point for Qadsiah. Fire Strays down to their last defensive setup here. Rage of Ultron fully charged. They've been able to hold so effectively, but Qadsiah Final Judgment is where they are breaking down these siege lines.
Okay, damage calcers, time to let me know. Can a single invisible boundary deal with the combined damage of the Eye of Agamotto with Helis's ultimate? Because Helis will be hitting them both. It's down to Kai to try and make the first thing happen. Oh, never mind, no invisible boundary. Just get picked in a neutral. Crazy play from Qadsiah.
And Fire Strays are once again disintegrating. Whoops is able to back away. Qadsiah only losing Maluki though, and that is Mantis. They have quite fast movement speed, so they'll be able to make it back extremely quickly. Not as quickly as Fire Strays though, as we are obviously right next to their spawn.
Oh yeah, attrition's definitely in favor of Fire Strays right now. If you can equal out your frags, find the knockouts 1 for 1, you should be in a great position. Binary, just an annoying presence in the back for now, just opening the way for Exo.
Binary is taken down, as is Tilt. Exo will be sniped by Healers, who has that Omega Hurricane. They could once again go for this Eye of Agamotto Omega Hurricane. Once more bodies are out of the spawn point, this could be the final push. Portal gonna try and shut down the reinforcements by blocking off some entrances.
Okay, there are still 4 entrances though. It's not a hard lock like it would be on Yggdrasil Path. Kai just going to be able to move in and block one of these more bodily than the others. The Eye of Agamotto still good to go. Out comes the defensive use of the Soul Resurgence. A big push comes through, and it still means that Woops gets taken out. The Storm of the Century descends upon this, as even with the damage coming through from the Supernova, it seems too much to bear for Fire Strays as they whittle down to Button Ember, and Qadsiah burn bright.
The Omega Hurricane into that Eye of Agamotto did get forced physics, but was still able to catch 2 people into that storm damage, into a final judgment. There is very little, in fact, probably nothing in the game that can withstand that much overwhelming firepower. And as such, Qadsiah claimed the triple point. Is now up to Fire Strays to try and mirror to send us to an overtime. Otherwise, their journey ends here.
Worth noting as well, of course, that Sonic Seduction does shut down. It gives an ultimate silence onto players who, even if they aren't seduced, are within the cone of effect and taking that tick damage, which can really mess with the fight planning of an enemy team when, hey, we want to combine these ultimates to try and have like overwhelming firepower, but suddenly you can't use them. Really does change up your calculus for how a fight works. For Fire Strays though, this is far from over. They may be facing elimination. They're looking down the barrel, but they still have some fight in them.
Yeah, it's currently on 14k damage, which is a solid 3k more than anyone else in the game right now. Just absolutely trying to target. Where Tilt and Healers, they're spread out almost exactly even in terms of final hits, in terms of damage. They are working it together beautifully right now. Fire Strays on the attack. There is an Iron Fist being hovered.
Okay, I do not approve. And there we go. Vale will not be disappointing me today. Back onto the human torch, of course, it has been very damaging thus far. Healer's actually going to potentially meet Vale up in the air, which will be interesting. I haven't seen too much of a healer's human torch. It was only brought up momentarily on Hell's Heaven for the last fight on Super Soldier Factory before they lost out on that one.
Psylocke plus Captain America, a classic lineup for just trying to flank the backline, but now it has just turned into Psylocke as Binary will be returning to spawn, trying to go for the burst onto healers who will immediately use that Fantastic Force to heal back up. As we will see, the push of Fire Strays has been slowed down to a crawl, making sure that they regroup before they try and commit again.
Yeah, just back to the drawing board. Don't want to waste any time taking an under-resourced fight here. They really are hoping that Whoops will be able to get a quick burst onto someone. Look at how Healers is using their 3D cam here, by the way. Completely, essentially invisible below the lip of that high ground. Saw Whoops coming, and so there's a good reaction coming through from our Qadsiah to make sure they aren't caught by surprise by that Psylocke.
Trying to get onto that human torch, trying to pick them out of the sky here. Kyoshis is getting targeted down extremely aggressively here, but will get healed back up. And Woods is really trying to go for these quick blow-ups, and finally Tilt will take out Vale, as these teams are just trading shots back and forth.
All right, Healers down already. It's a great opening here for Fire Strays, and they want to pull the trigger. Maluki instantly activates for Soul Resurgence. She's going to be matched here, but moving around the back is going to be the final judgment coming through from Tilt. Tracking challenge looks to be going so well so far. Kyoshis and Exo both down and out for the count, but Whoop says it's not over yet. Binary falls to the Soul Sword of Magic as the soul of Steve Rogers is consigned to a briny grave below. He's going to be sailing Tartarus on his vibranium shield, but Whoops has no friends remaining.
Healers on the magic for the reinforcement to follow up on that portal for the counter assist to try and make sure they could contest this fight as they're chasing down, trying to take out the flanking Psylocke. That is a huge stagger away from Fire Strays. They even brought out the Venom. They brought everything to make sure they could reinforce quickly here.
Yeah, a little bit of a mashup composition now from our Qadsiah, but Exo seems to have not been too amused by the more eclectic comp that was brought to bear. Kaya still going forth on the Venom. These tendrils, they are a little bit nasty. Symbiotic resilience will allow them to survive a moment longer. And now Vale has to think about how they're going to make this entry with the Supernova. Isn't too much to try and shut it down. Maluki 20% away from a Soul Resurgence, but she could easily be overwhelmed if Vale full commits with that Fantastic Fall.
They have that Supernova, they have the Freedom Charge for extra bonus health, they have Defi with the Psionic Seduction. This will be the main engage tool here. Counter, all there really is. The Psionic Seduction is going to be burned early to try and make sure that they prevent a Supernova from coming in. Milk Boy trying to get their targeting onto Binary in the backline, who will not even get pulled in. Able to tag through Supernova to try and melt through Venom, but the healing is just too much. Soul Resurgence as Healers with the Dark Charge trying to get up to Exo in the backline, but they're holding the line, but they're out of ultimates. It's a 1 for 3 in favor of our Qadsiah with 30 seconds left. Dance of the Butterfly to try and get some counters. Will find one, but once again, Whoops is left alone.
They just don't have the sustain here. But as I live and breathe, I saw a competitive Marvel Rivals Ignite Darkchild. Of course, it instantly got slept and just left alone, so he didn't get too much done in that one. A brand new portal, a brand new fight. It's last chance saloon for Fire Strays. They could be the first team eliminated from EMEA if they do not pop off in this fight, Tetcher.
Bale on the flank, trying to get rid of the backline, making some room, as we're seeing just the maximum delay out of Binary. Exo, Soul Rejuvenation for any kind of extra protection, as Lindstrom, Invisible Boundary, is shutting this down. Tilt is slowly charging up, and if they get this final judgment done, this may be the end for Fire Strays. The Invisible Boundary of Kyoshi starts to tick down piece by piece. Final judgment is charged, and the second they find an opening, we are likely going to see Fire Strays eaten off the point here, waiting for the last moment. And here we go, pushing on in to clean out the attackers, and our Qadsiah have opened up the point, opened up their opportunity with the damage boost. Binary can't make it. That will be our Qadsiah taking the 3-0, and they will move on in this lower bracket.
I asked Tilt what he feels when he guns down and eliminates Fire Strays. He told me, recoil. Is a excellent showing from our Qadsiah. It was an unlucky beginning to their bracket going up against Rad Esports first. We know that Rad went on to eliminate, well, not eliminate, but knock Virtus Pro down to the lower bracket. Possibly the strongest team in Europe right now. It was not easy for our Qadsiah, but going up against Fire Strays in the lower bracket, we're starting to see what this